Hey guys, this is Matt, and today we're going to do a little review of the Tamron 35-150 2.8 lens. First, a little look at the lens itself. You have your standard lens hood with a lens cap 82 millimeter filter with a lock button to make sure you can lock it. And I'll create it'll say can't zoom interact with the focus ring right here, and it has your buttons and a USB-C port, so you can customize this ring in different settings right here. Customize it to use it how you want. One of the things is it is an 82 millimeter compared to your 7200, which is a 77 millimeter filter set. When you put them side by side, you notice that the 7200 is actually shorter and that, but you zoom it all the way out, about the same when they're zoomed all the way out. So when it comes to traveling and putting it in your case, there's definitely a benefit to having this being a bit shorter because it is not an internal zoom like 7200s. One of the main downsides of having 82 millimeter filter size lens is that the rest of the body is also going to be bigger than your 7200, to where your grip when you're holding it and you're zooming in and out, it is a bit harder for your hand to do it for long periods of time, especially when you're doing video and you're trying to get nice smooth zooms. Compared to photos, you can just crank on it. Compared to when you're doing video, you want to go nice and slow. It takes a little bit more effort from your hand and your grip. I have good size hands, but still, it takes a full grip of my hand compared to a 7200. Definitely a bit easier for me to grab. The other thing is with your zoom range, obviously 7200, you can do it with your thumb, but it's also nice short throw compared to when you're doing a 35-150. That's a lot of zoom range, so you are going to have a lot more turning radius to get it all the way out throughout that range. And it is definitely a bit tighter to where it is harder. You can't really just do it with your thumb like you can with a 70-200. One of the main questions you have with third-party lens is how is the autofocus? Because third-party lenses are notorious for not having as good autofocus as name brand Sony, Canon, Nikon lenses that work with their body. But because Sony has their mount open to the market, manufacturers are easily able to get into this lens mount and get the best autofocus possible for their lens compared to having to reverse engineer it. I will say though, this autofocus is not as good as the 70-200, even the first gen. It is noticeably slower. It does not realize your focus points as quick, which it has its good and bad when it comes to that. Because once it locks onto your subject, it does take a bit longer for it to come off your subject, say someone comes in front. So once it is on your subject, it is locked on. It does not want to accidentally go to a subject you don't want it to. It likes to focus farther and it does close up. Another question is, what's the weight like? This is a big lens with a lot of glass in it for it to be able to do a range like this. 35-150, 2.8. You wonder, how much does it weigh? Well, compared to the original Sony 7200, this is definitely lighter on paper and just in your hand. It can feel a bit heavier when it is extended all the way out, but that's why you use a monopod or a tripod, and that's why the normal 7200 as a base plate, because a lens like this, even though this one has optical stabilization and this one doesn't, you don't want to just handheld it if possible. Photo, you can get away with it because cameras now, they have such fast shutter speeds, and the IBIS inside the camera is so good to where when it comes to photos, you don't usually need optical stabilization unless you're doing really slow shutter speed pans. But in my opinion, if you're shooting video and you're doing it on a monopod or a tripod, you don't need optical stabilization unless you're zoomed all the way out and you're in a very, very shaky environment. Then yes, optical stabilization will help you and you'll notice it more then. But if you're shooting on a monopod or a tripod and you have generally stable hands, the IBIS in your camera, whether it's the Nikon or the Sony version, it's going to be okay. As long as that's not super jittery, you'll be okay. This is a 2 to 2.8 lens, but you're getting 2.8 really only at 35 millimeters. Then you get F2.2 at 35 and so on and so on all the way up to F2.8. But most of the time, you're just going to want to lock it at F2.8. That way you can zoom in and out without your f-stop changing, without your exposure changing. Unless you want to go auto with your ISO and your shutter speed and let this go from 2 to 2.8 and just zoom in and out, you're better off just keeping it locked at 2.8 and using it that way. How is the autofocus speed? Not only is it when you want to keep it on a subject and there's objects moving in front, or when you want to change subjects, it's also when your subject is coming close at you fastly. Like in hockey and most sports, it can do it from a distance, but when it comes to about 55 to 35 millimeters, you notice it a bit more when it comes super quick at you. It's gonna miss it a little bit. It's not as fast as the 70 to 200 is, to where you do notice it a bit, to where there's times where it is slightly out of focus when it comes to either video or photo, just because it doesn't have quite the autofocus capabilities as a native Sony lens. Really, my only true main gripe in terms of the outcome of this lens and the usability is I wish the autofocus was just slightly better, because when you go from the 70 to 200 to this, you do notice that this is a bit slower and it will miss more than a 70 to 200, whether it's video or photo. My one suggestion for Tamron, when they do a version 2 of this lens, and I know this is a small lens, but if you can put a collar around this, like 70 to 200 have, because this is, as much as it is a lighter lens for the size, it is still a big lens. It does still have weight. And if you don't have a cage on your camera, you might not have the room to put a base plate onto your camera, put it onto a tripod without this hitting before your camera. I would absolutely suggest getting this lens. If you only have $1,700 and you can't really afford the new Sony 70 to 200 2.8, I would absolutely get this lens over the version 1 70 to 200 any day. This lens is heavy, bulky, big compared to this one, to where it's lighter, definitely a bit easier to use because of the size, and it has more versatility, especially if you don't like doing lens changes, like especially in sports. You'll have your close-ups in the locker rooms or in the hallways, and then like hockey and basketball, players can be either far away or they can come up right to you. So where it's hard to, you don't want to do lens changes. You don't want to risk getting lens on your sensor, to where 35 to 150 for hockey, basketball, those size of sports in terms of your playing surface, this lens is perfect for the zoom range. You get good low light, very fast lens with 2 to 2.8. You can get 2.0, 35 millimeters, dark hallways, hit great blurry backgrounds, great bokeh. You can get 82 millimeter filter thread, very common filter thread, to where you can get an 82 millimeter filter, and then say you have another lens that's a 67 millimeter filter thread. You just get a step down ring, step up ring, and it works easily. You're saving money. You just get the biggest sets. You just get the biggest filter you can get, and it works all of your lenses, no matter what you get in the future. Do I own this lens? Unfortunately, do not. This is a lens I am sending back this weekend, and I will have to be switching back to this lens, and it's going to be hard. And I might have to sell this lens and then end up buying this lens because for what I do in hockey, right up to the glass, 35-150 is near perfect in terms of zoom range. You get 2.0, 2.8, perfect for photos and video in low light. I mean, not even just for video. This is great for photos as well because, especially in hockey tour, you can shoot through photo holes to where instead of having to switch your camera bodies and running 2 camera bodies with a 24-70 and a 70-200, you can run this lens and you can run a very high aperture prime lens on your other body if that's your option, to where you can get maybe at 85 1.2 or 1.4, get crazy depth of field. And just having this lens on your body gives you so much more options of what you can do when you're using that camera that has this lens on it, or what you can do with your second body for photos or video, because you have a 2.8 range of 35-150 covered, plus a 35-2.0 great background blur. I think right now we are on a Sigma 28-70 2.8. I'm going to switch over to this lens and show you the difference between a 2.8 of 35 millimeters and a 2.0 of 35 millimeters. So this is what it looks like. We are now on the Tamron 35-150 at 35 millimeters, 2.8. You're definitely getting a lot more background blur compared to having just a normal 35 on a 2.8 lens. You get crazy, like just even, especially when you're bringing stuff up, if you're doing YouTube kind of content like this, just 2.8 in general is going to give you a lot more depth of field to where you can separate the subject more from the background. The other thing you can do is, because Sony now has like their FX30, which is a 1.5 crop compared to a full frame, to where I believe this lens turns into a 50-200. That is crazy, to where you can get 50 at 2.8. It does not change your f-stop at all. You can go all the way up to 200. All right, guys, thank you for watching one of my first YouTube videos when it's this style. If you don't follow my other social pages, follow me at @_MSFilms. We do a ton of hockey content over there. Try to do the highest quality hockey content on the internet, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, especially YouTube. We try to grow a lot more on YouTube. Trying to, maybe do more videos like this where it's behind the scenes of creating that content, showing a bit more of the gear that we use to create the content that you see. So if you want to see more videos like this, make sure you comment down below what kind of videos you want to see, what specific things you want to see, what questions you have. I'll either reply to them directly, or maybe if they're good enough, we'll make a whole YouTube video out of it. Thank you guys. See you next time.